Okay, welcome back. For those of you that have joined us recently or are new subscribers, welcome along to my channel. My name's Suzanne and I garden and grow cut flowers in Devon in the UK, which is sort of the equivalent to a Zone 8B. When growing cut flowers, we always find ourselves in a cycle of looking ahead. If you're going to be growing flowers the following year, you really need to be planning for it quite some time in advance. We recently did the sowing of our biennials, so that's something that we do in May and June to flower the following May and June. I've just been, dare I say it, ordering more seed. This seed I've been ordering is for some cool annuals that I will be sowing at the end of August for flowering in the spring next year. And it seems early, we're mid-July, but I now need to be turning my attention to the festive period of time. I won't use the actual word because it is a tad early. But basically I stopped doing markets and farmer markets for my fresh flowers because it wasn't something that really worked for me. But I did continue to do markets in November and December, so they're festive markets, and I sell dried flower products. I make them again in advance, so that's another planning ahead. So I don't tend to make them all, before the market. I'll start making them sometimes in October time. As soon as the fresh flower season ends for me, I can draw my attention to making wreaths and little baubles, all sorts of things that you can sell at markets, which are either aimed at a gift market, so things that people are buying to gift to other people, and then also there's the decorating the home market, so things that people can take home and decorate their homes with. So we're mid-July and I'm already thinking ahead to these markets, and I'm thinking about drying my flowers. Drying flowers is a skill which I'm still fine-tuning. So I am by no means an expert, but I went ahead and I've got these 3 books. Found all 3 of these books useful. And I actually was lucky enough when I attended a conference about 2 years ago to actually, this author, Bex Partridge, was a speaker at the conference, and it was really interesting to hear her speak about drying cut flowers and what she uses them for, and she had an example of an installation there that she'd done which was absolutely magnificent. So her book is Everlastings, and it not only gives you tips on what to dry and how to dry it, but she's got examples of different design things that you can make there as well. She's got some different wreaths, and some of them are quite contemporary and some of them are quite old, but you can see you've got techniques as well. So that's a very good book. So this book is Flower Crafts, and it's by Ellen Spector Platt. And there are some lovely, we all dream, don't we, of having these areas where we can dry our flowers like that. I will show you where I dry my flowers, but that's just a dream. I have to utilise my tack room for my drying. It's got lots of sort of flower crafts in it as well, and making slightly more unusual things. And I haven't even managed to make half of the examples of things in these books, mainly because of lack of time, but I hope to one day. But one of the favourite things for me in this book is they've got a section of photographs which shows you the different colours. So this is an example of pinks and reds, and it's got, so you can sort of see what they look like dried, because I remember when I initially dried a few things, I just thought they just looked, dead. But then when you see how they look in an arrangement, you can see that actually the things work really nicely together. And again, they sort of give you an idea here of golden colour flowers to grow, And I think there is a photograph of sort of yellows and golds as well. So I find this book quite useful for that, just to see the things all next to each other, because I am a fan of a monochromatic design, so similar tones. So this is here, you've got sort of neutrals, but I love those sections in this book. I suppose this video is to give you advice on cutting and drying flowers yourselves at home, really through learning what I've learned through trial and error. And I'm by no means an expert, because I am still trialing and making errors and sometimes getting things right. Starting with when to cut the flowers for drying is I steer clear of the mornings, and that's just because I think there's just too much dew and moisture in the air. So I tend to cut my flowers for drying in the evenings, and I tend to do that once it's started to cool down a little bit. So I try and avoid those really hot daytime temperatures, because we all know if you cut anything in the middle of the day that it just immediately wilts. The second thing I learned was I'd read everywhere that you needed to use an elastic band and that you couldn't use twine. But with my environmental ethos, I thought, don't be ridiculous. Of course I can use twine. If I tie the twine tight enough, then I'm sure it won't be a problem. But I was wrong. Some things were okay. Some things were okay and weren't, fallen onto the floor a few days later. But some things, the stems really do shrivel up to a point where the elastic band will move with them, because it's elastic and it's got give. So trying to be environmentally friendly, I thought was okay, I'll just reuse the elastic bands. But I've also learned that you can't do that, because on the second season, as soon as you start wrapping them around the plants, they just snap and they become brittle. So I do use elastic bands for tying them up. The next tip, I suppose, is about where you dry your flowers. Now, as I've said in many videos before, my studio has a metal roof, so it's really prone to condensation. It doesn't leak in here, but it does get condensation, so there's quite a lot of moisture in the room. You probably could dry flowers in an area like this with a tin roof, but I think you would have to run a dehumidifier to keep the moisture out of the air. That's an option that I don't know if she still does, but I know when I attended the talk by Bex Partridge, I know she mentioned that she often used a dehumidifier. I think drying flowers really depends a lot on the weather, the year you're having. When we had the drought year and it was very dry, flowers dried really, really quickly with really excellent results. This year there is a lot of moisture in the air. It rains nearly every day, even if it's only briefly. It does tend to rain continuously at the moment, and I wonder if the results for drying things will be quite as good because of that. So not only do you want somewhere moisture free, you really want somewhere dark if you want to maintain colour. So when you're drying things like your straw flowers, I haven't got very many good examples. Your oregano, your statice, your straw flowers. You really want to dry those things in a dark place so that the sun doesn't bleach them. We all know that when we put our favourite photograph in a frame, in a window, and we look at it 12 months later, it's often ruined where the sun has bleached it. And the bleach will do that to your flowers. But that's not a bad thing, because there are in fact things that really I like the bleached colour for, and in fact some people will bleach them with bleach chemically. But I believe that's unnecessary. It's an unnecessary use of bleach. If you hang things in direct sunshine, which for me is my greenhouse, you get a beautiful bleached colour. I mean, this Greek cress would have been cress that was dried in the greenhouse, and that is as good as if it had have been bleached. My favourite arrangements do tend to be very neutral toned with browns and creams. So I do dry quite a few things in the greenhouse, but obviously there are things that you want to keep colour, which I dry in my tack room. Generally speaking, you want to cut flowers when they're as they would be if you were cutting them for fresh, because you don't want them to have already started to go over, because they'll still look like they've started to go over when they've dried. Having said that, there are some things that I like looking perfect, and there are things that I don't mind going brown. So I will dry Ami that I want to be white, but I also like here the brown shape as a seed head. And the same things like the auroch, I don't mind that going a browny colour. Sometimes that works really well for neutrals. But this book, the Everlastings book, is the one that's particularly good for telling you the stages to cut things. Now, I've tried both methods of drying flowers, one being cutting your flowers and conditioning them just as you would for fresh flower arrangements and work, and the second being just cutting them and processing them immediately for drying. And the jury's still out for me as to which method gives the best results. But certainly this year I have not been putting things into water first, because I do feel there's too much humidity in the air, and I think by having put the stems into water and then elastic banding and hanging them up, I don't think this year that would work. Last year when I did condition some things in water, there were no ill effects of doing that, but it was much drier and really sort of hot air temperatures. This year the temperatures are fairly cool, really. I certainly haven't found it, not that I would wear shorts, but I haven't found it shorts weather. I think the other tip that I would give you, which is perhaps the one that is the main struggle for me, would be storing them once you've dried them. I would definitely say not in plastic, so the same as when you store seeds that you collect from your cut flower patch and you pop them into, you know, brown paper envelopes or a brown paper bag. I would advise drying your flowers in cardboard boxes. I wrap mine in tissue paper, but you could use old wrapping paper or newspaper. I think if the only option for you is plastic storage containers, then perhaps it would be advisable to get some sachets of silica gel or something like that. Again, I don't use silica gel for the drying process, so I don't use silica gel for the storing process either. But that is an option. So I store everything in cardboard boxes. Now, you may have somewhere at home where you can store your flowers. You don't want it to be too hot because it will make the flowers very brittle. You don't want it to be too cold, so you want it nice sort of room temperature, and you don't want vermin. I have all these wreaths hanging in my studio here, and I didn't make them like that. The mice eat things off of them, and I come in and I find bits of seed pod and things all over the floor. So you want somewhere, vermin proof, not too hot, not too cold, dry, definitely not damp. And you want somewhere that you're not going to mind having them there. I know that sounds silly, but I end up having a lot of boxes of dried flowers in my kitchen for months, and it drives me absolutely potty. But unfortunately, because I can't make my dried flower products for the markets in my studio, I make them in my kitchen, which means I need the flowers in my kitchen. I don't have a huge kitchen, so I do not store all of my flowers in the kitchen. In fact, most of my flowers are dry stored a mile away from here, which is inconvenient, because if I'm making something in the kitchen and I suddenly think, oh, I'd really like some poppies with that, and the poppies are a mile away, it is a little bit of a nuisance. But that's the only way I can keep things dry, and that's because my house is a 70s property, And the only way we can keep it mold free is to have all of our windows, you know, cracked open a little bit all year. And now if we were not so stingy, we could have our heating on and they'd probably be okay. But we don't put heating on in our house over the winter. We have a boiler that does our hot water, so that keeps the kitchen at an okay temperature. And then we have a wood burner in the lounge, which keeps us warm enough there. And then the bedrooms and everything are cold, but we've done it for the last 2 years, and I think actually it's quite healthy to not be too hot and warm. And people laugh, but I'll often answer the door in my dressing gown, and I'm always dressed, but I have a big fluffy dressing gown that I put over the top of my clothes, and I call it my house coat. But we're getting way off topic of dried flowers now. So we've got things like honesty. We've got some lovely, these are the Nigella pods, my favourite. These are the Albion black pod. Got some oregano, some Dorcas, amaranthus, feverfew, poppy seed heads. Got some everlastings here, the pink poker status, a stilby, larkspur, more stilby, some ammy, all sorts of things in here drying away. And now I need to try and make some room for a few more things that I just cut. Thank you very much for joining me again this week. It's been great to show you what I've got drying, because as I mentioned, I haven't done any videos about drying flowers before. Next week, I suspect I'm going to be starting another wedding series. I did one last year, which was for an early July wedding. There's going to be one coming up for an early August wedding, although it may just be delayed slightly because editing those can take some time. But a couple more things in the pipeline. A tour is definitely overdue, but also I'm going to take part in the butterfly watch. So we'll do that together and see what butterflies I can find both in the cottage garden and the cut flower patch. If you do like my content, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you'd like to follow my cut flower and gardening journey, then don't forget to subscribe. And if you'd like to contribute towards the making of these videos, you can buy me a coffee, and the link for coffee buying is in the description to the video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.